Divine Entertainment. By Orthoris. Chapter 34. Introducing Amethyst. Scholar Arc. Day 16. Atlas and Amethyst were descending from their academy island. They finally had a day off together, so Atlas invited Amethyst along to meet Charity, Belle and Crimson. Since his last lunch with Belle, Atlas had only had the chance to meet up with her once briefly before today. Crimson had remained exceedingly busy during Atlas's last 2 visits, but at least he was able to coordinate a meeting for all of them this week. They'd meet up at Applebee's place for a light lunch, and see where fate would take them from there on out. Convincing Amethyst to tag along didn't take a lot of effort, since he didn't have any friends due to his prodigy status. The other students were either jealous of him or thought he was unapproachable due to their difference in skill. Aside from Atlas, Amethyst didn't have any friends, so he jumped on the opportunity to meet some new ponies. "You think we'll get along?" Amethyst asked, anxious at the prospect of meeting so many new faces. "Of course," Atlas reassured him. "Knowing them, you'll have no problems becoming their friend. Especially Belle, just mention magic around her and she'll jump on the opportunity to talk about it." Atlas chuckled thinking about his pink friend's enthusiasm. "Charity Belle, right? The Earth Pony?" Amethyst asked, which Atlas confirmed with a nod. "Why is she that interested in magic? I mean, she'll never be able to use any spells." Amethyst was obviously confused. In all his time in the Crystal Kingdom he had only met a few Earth Ponies, none of which displayed any interest in the magical arts. Earth Ponies in the Crystal Kingdom were usually only interested in farming, so meeting Belle would be highly unusual for him. Apparently her parents didn't want her to even know unicorn magic existed, since they were quite strict. Atlas explained, leaving out some important details. So when she grew up and read about it in a book she was immediately fascinated by it, and since then she's tried to get her hooves on every book about the topic. "But she's not like, crazy or anything, right?" Amethyst asked worriedly. "Oh God, no." Atlas laughed. "But she might get up close and personal. She has quite an energetic personality. I'll take your word for it," Amethyst said, his concerns not at all alleviated. "So you haven't mentioned where we're going to meet them yet?" Amethyst remarked. "Oh, sorry. We're going to meet them at a restaurant called Applebee's. Ever heard of it?" Atlas said. Can't say I have." Amethyst replied after a moment of thought. "You'll love it, Applebee's chef makes really good food," Atlas promised. "It's a bit out of the way so there's not too many ponies there most of the time. Ideal for meeting some pony new if you ask me." "Alright then, I'm looking forward to meeting them," Amethyst said, now walking a bit more confidently. Asterisk. Atlas and Amethyst turned the corner leading towards Applebee's. It was a sunny day, so Atlas could already see Belle and Crimson sitting at one of the outside tables. Crimson was seated with his back to them, but Belle had already spotted the pair and was happily waving in their direction. Upon noticing Belle's enthusiastic manner, Crimson turned around as well to wave at them. Atlas returned the gesture and approached their table. "Hey Belle," Atlas said once they were close enough. "And you too, Crimson. I haven't seen you in forever." "You have only yourself to blame, because you always show up when I'm gone," Crimson quipped back. "One could assume you're doing it on purpose." "Maybe I am," Atlas said, wiggling his eyebrows. "So let me introduce my roommate to you. This is Amethyst Blade. Pleased to meet you." Amethyst greeted. "Likewise," Crimson returned. "So happy to finally meet you," Belle exclaimed. "I've heard you know a lot about magic, can I ask you some questions?" Atlas shot Amethyst an "I told you so" look before sitting down next to Crimson. Amethyst bemusedly shook his head and went to the other side of the table to sit down next to Belle, where he immediately was bombarded with questions. "So how have you been doing?" Atlas asked Crimson. "Oh, you know, just working. Crimson replied. Nothing out of the ordinary. Really? Atlas said disbelievingly. You want me to believe that I don't see you for over 2 weeks, and there's nothing at all worth mentioning going on? For fuck's sake dude, we're in a new city, we all got new jobs and met new ponies. There has to be something. Crimson seemed to squirm around a bit, staring at his glass of juice in front of him. Atlas was just about to dig further when Crimson was saved by the appearance of a rather round pony. Is this a new face I see? Appleby said, seemingly having appeared out of nowhere. Every pony at the table recoiled in shock, all of them were too preoccupied with their conversation that none of them had seen him coming. Which was something to say since the stallion was kinda hard to overlook. Well, go on then and introduce me. I haven't got all day. Appleby said with a chuckle. Screw it, I'll just do it myself. Hi, I'm Appleby, the proud owner of this establishment. Pleased to meet you. Appleby took up Amethyst's hoof rather forcefully and gave it a powerful shake. Hi, I'm Amethyst Blade, Atlas's roommate at the academy. The stallion in question answered. Well, you take good care of him then, wouldn't want to lose such a good customer, right? Appleby ribbed Amethyst and started laughing. So anyway, what can I get for you all? A menu for Amethyst wouldn't be bad, I guess, since he doesn't know what you have yet. Atlas reminded the wobbling stallion. Alright, how forgetful of me, be right back. Appleby said, rushing inside to get a menu. He returned shortly after, and a few minutes later they had placed their orders and resumed their conversations. So, how's school been going for you? Crimson asked nonchalantly. Don't try to change the subject, Crimson. Atlas deadpanned. I'm sure Belle told you all about it. You're hiding something and I'm getting to the bottom of this if it's the last thing I do. Atlas said, striking a rather ridiculous pose. Crimson looked at him confused, before giving in. All right. He relented. It's enough that Belle chews my ear off every time I'm home, I don't need you to start too. Atlas grinned and sat back down again. Out with it then. What has the mighty Crimson squirming in his seat and trying to avoid the subject? My co-worker, kinda, Crimson mumbled. What's that? Atlas asked, his grin growing wider by the second. I think you need to take that dick out of your mouth so I can understand you. My co-worker is kinda cute. Alright. Crimson burst out, making eye contact with Atlas, daring him to make fun of it. A gasp could be heard from across the table. I want all the dirty details. Belle said, seemingly having forgotten about Amethyst for the moment. You never told me that. That's because I knew you'd never shut up about it if I did. Crimson retorted, exasperated. What was her name again? Belle tried to remember. Blue something or another. Blue Current. Crimson helped her out. Her name's Blue Current. You have to bring her along sometime. Belle said, making it obvious that Crimson had no say in this discussion. But I can't just invite her along. Crimson said. That would be so awkward and maybe she'd find out that I like her. If you're not going to do it, I will. Belle said, completely serious. Crimson and Belle got into a staring contest for a few seconds, leaving Amethyst and Atlas behind in their confusion. This got way out of hoof for Atlas's taste, and Amethyst didn't really know what to do since he just met the other two ponies. Appleby came back with their food. Apparently he could sense the tension surrounding the table and just quietly put down their plates. Atlas whispered a thanks and resumed looking back and forth between Crimson and Belle. They continued to stare at each other for a little longer, until finally, Crimson cracked. All right, I'll ask her to come along the next time we meet up. As Crimson officially gave up. But just as work buddies. He added, and started to twirl some of the pasta onto his fork. That'll do. Belle said with a satisfied smirk, before starting to eat her own food. So anyway, Amethyst, about that spell we were just talking about. Belle immediately returned to her previous conversation, patiently waiting for Amethyst to pick it back up again too. When their conversation returned to its previous state, Atlas leaned over to Crimson, who was angrily twirling his pasta. "Sorry," he whispered. "I didn't mean for it to go so out of hoof." "It's not your fault," Crimson said after letting out a sigh. "It's just how Belle is, you know her." Atlas nodded and leaned back over his deep-fried vegetable sticks. He looked at his plate. He was really starting to miss eating meat. With a sigh he started to dig in himself. "So what's she like?" he asked Crimson. "She's a good mare," Crimson said. "She always helps me out, looks after me real well. Whenever I don't know something she's there to help me out. I know you might think that's what co-workers do, but it's not just me. She does that for every pony." Crimson ate a mouthful of pasta. "Weather duty in the Crystal Kingdom is hard work, you know," Crimson continued. "We're constantly understaffed and the workload is just getting heavier. If it wasn't for her, some of the guys might have already given up. She's always there, making sure we're happy, going the extra mile to make sure we're all smiling." Crimson started to smile thinking about her. "She really sounds like a reliable friend," Atlas commented. "Definitely," Crimson replied. "And she's cute, did I mention that?" "I think it may have been mentioned already, yes," Atlas chuckled. "Anyway, I hope things go well. I really like her, you know." "Don't worry, it'll be fine," Atlas said, giving Crimson a friendly pat on the back. "There's just one problem though." Crimson sighed. "Oh." Atlas was intrigued. "And just what would that be?" "Her dad's my boss." Crimson winced. "And he specifically told me to stay away from her." Atlas sharply inhaled air, as if he stubbed his toe. "Oh boy." "Exactly." Asterisk. Atlas was walking next to Amethyst. Their group was on their way towards one of the Crystal Kingdom's many parks. The plan was to just lounge around, maybe even play a few games. At some point they had switched conversation partners, so now Crimson was stuck with Belle, who was currently chewing his ear off about all the things she learned from Amethyst. "See, I told you," Atlas said. "No problem at all." Amethyst glanced back at Belle and Crimson walking behind them. "Yet it's almost scary how fast she latched onto me." "Yeah, Belle's really great at making friends with every pony she meets." Atlas chuckled, looking back himself. "So what do you think of them?" "I think they're really nice. I'd like to tag along again when I get another opportunity. I feel like we could really get along well," Amethyst said, turning his head to look forward again. "Sure, the more the merrier," Atlas said. They snaked their way around a group of ponies walking in the opposite direction. The group was chattering happily amongst themselves as they passed, while Atlas and Amethyst didn't say anything for the moment. Atlas was lost in his own thoughts and didn't pay much attention to where he was going when he bumped into one of the last ponies from the other group. "Sorry," Atlas said. "No problem," came the answer from the pony he had bumped. After walking a few meters, Atlas's hooves started to feel tingly, a weird sensation overcoming his body. His vision started to blur and he furrowed his brow, trying to focus. "Hey," Atlas said weakly. "I don't feel so good." He heard something like a sack of potatoes falling over next to him, so he looked over to see Amethyst collapsed on the ground. "Amethyst? What's wrong, dude?" he said, shuffling over to his friend. "Guys? I think something's wrong." He turned his head to seek help from Belle. Her medical prowess would surely be useful. But instead of her worried gaze, he saw two more collapsed ponies, one pink, the other red. He couldn't really tell if they were his friends since his vision was getting blurrier by the second. "Belle?" he asked weakly. "Crimson?" No answer came, but 5 other figures came out of a side alley and approached their group. Hello? Could you help? Atlas wanted to ask for the stranger's help, when his legs gave out under him. He collapsed and fell to his side. One of the figures approached him, so he stretched out a hoof towards them in a last-ditch effort to ask for help. Just go to sleep already. An oddly familiar voice said in an annoyed voice. The next thing Atlas felt was a sharp pain in his head, and then nothing. Author's note. It's happening. Mustache. Also have some bell/crimson shenanigans. The next chapter is an important one, as you might have guessed. It's already finished and just has to go through the editorial process now. It's gonna be a long one. Look forward to it, laughing face. Also, I think it's safe to say that Amethyst has successfully been introduced, and as such deserves to be unlocked. Hope you had a good read, and feel free to comment. Once again, thanks to my editor Ambrose and my proofreader Kilobytes for a job well done. Today's chapter was brought to you by this song. I've been listening to a lot of Ms. lately. Good shit. End author's note.